Golden Bachelor.
When fans first met Mel Owens on The Golden Bachelor, they saw a charming, silver-haired romantic searching for a second chance at love. A former NFL player turned attorney, Mel carried himself with confidence, wisdom, and that calm, reassuring smile that made viewers believe in fairy tale endings after 60. But while roses were blooming on screen, a storm was quietly building off-screen. Because long before Mel stepped into the spotlight for love, there was unfinished business from his past, a divorce that refused to fade quietly into history. And now, that chapter has taken a dramatic turn. A court decision has ordered Mel to pay a significant amount of money to his ex-wife, a ruling that shocked fans and reportedly left Mel scrambling to protect everything he worked so hard to rebuild. Let's rewind a little. Mel entered the show as a divorced man ready to start fresh. He spoke openly about heartbreak, about lessons learned, and about wanting a partner to share sunsets, slow dances, and Sunday mornings filled with laughter. He wasn't looking for drama, he was looking for peace. But as it turns out, the past doesn't always stay in the past. While viewers were watching romantic dates and emotional confessions unfold, legal discussions were still ongoing behind closed doors. Financial obligations, property matters, and long-standing disputes were being sorted out. Divorce settlements, especially after long marriages, can be complex. Emotions run deep. Numbers run even deeper. Sources say the court ultimately ruled that Mel owed a substantial financial payment to his ex. The amount was reportedly large enough to make headlines and large enough to make anyone's stomach drop. For a man in his 60s trying to begin again, that's not just paperwork, that's pressure. Imagine finally stepping into a hopeful new chapter only to be reminded that yesterday still has receipts. Fans were stunned. Social media lit up with reactions. Some people sympathized with Mel, saying divorce agreements are binding and fairness matters. Others argued that financial responsibilities from a long marriage must be honored, no matter how inconvenient the timing. And through it all, Mel stayed relatively quiet. That silence, it said a lot. Because while headlines can be loud, dignity often whispers. Those close to him say the legal battle stretched on longer than expected. There were negotiations, there were filings, there were tense moments. At one point, reports suggested the financial strain nearly put one of his properties at risk. Think about that for a second. From NFL stadiums packed with roaring crowds, to television cameras capturing romantic candlelight dinners, to legal documents threatening financial stability. Life can flip the script fast. Yet here's what makes this story compelling. Mel didn't disappear. He didn't lash out publicly. He didn't spiral into scandal. He reportedly fulfilled the court's decision and made good on the payment. That matters, because accountability, even when painful, is powerful. Now let's talk about the romantic irony here. Mel went on a show centered around second chances, around vulnerability, around building something lasting after loss. And in many ways, this legal chapter forced him to close an old door completely before stepping fully into something new. Sometimes love requires clean endings, and clean endings aren't always cheap. What makes this situation even more fascinating is the contrast between public perception and private reality. On screen, Mel appeared composed, hopeful, even playful at times. He flirted, he laughed, he shared stories about fatherhood and growth. Off-screen, he was navigating legal complexities that most viewers had no idea about. It's a reminder that reality television shows only part of the picture. And let's be honest, there's something almost poetic about it. A man who once fought battles on the football field was now fighting a very different kind of battle, one involving signatures instead of helmets. But here's the twist. This doesn't necessarily define him. In fact, for some fans, it humanizes him. Divorce is messy.
Long marriages involve shared assets, shared histories, and shared expectations. Courts exist to ensure fairness, even when fairness feels expensive. And Mel, by reportedly complying with the ruling, may have quietly protected his reputation in the long run, because nothing damages a fresh start like unresolved obligations. Now, let's zoom out. Why does this story resonate so strongly? Because it's relatable. Not the celebrity spotlight part, but the idea of trying to move forward while the past still tugs at your sleeve. How many people enter new relationships while still untangling old ones? How many people think they've closed a chapter, only to receive one more reminder in the mail? Mel's situation may be high profile, but the emotional theme is universal. And there's also a romantic layer here that's hard to ignore. Love in your 60s isn't about games. It's about stability, security, partnership. And if financial uncertainty suddenly enters the picture, that can shake confidence, not just personally, but romantically. Future partners don't just fall in love with a person, they consider the circumstances too. And yet, there's something admirable about someone who handles responsibility head-on.
In real life, love can involve attorneys, courtrooms, and bank transfers. Not exactly fairy tale imagery, but it's honest. And maybe that's why audiences can't look away. Because behind every televised love story is a human being with bills, history, and obligations. Mel's journey reminds us that second chances aren't just about finding someone new, they're about resolving what came before. And while the financial number attached to this case grabbed headlines, the bigger takeaway might be responsibility. Owning your past, fulfilling commitments, closing chapters with integrity. That's not dramatic, but it's meaningful. As fans continue to debate the situation, one question lingers. Does this legal decision change how viewers see him? For some, it's a cautionary tale about making sure your personal affairs are fully settled before stepping into the spotlight. For others, it's proof that even public figures must answer to the same legal systems as everyone else. And for romantics, it's a reminder that love after divorce requires courage, especially when the past isn't fully quiet yet. So what happens next? That part remains unwritten. But if there's one thing Mel's story teaches us, it's this. Life doesn't pause for romance. Responsibilities follow you into every new season. The real glow-up isn't just finding love, it's handling your obligations with maturity, even when it costs you. And maybe that's the most attractive quality of all. Because charm fades, fame fluctuates, headlines move on. But character? Character sticks. As this legal chapter officially closes, all eyes are on what comes next for Mel Owens. Will he retreat from the spotlight? Will he embrace another chance at love? Or will he simply enjoy a well-earned reset after years of emotional and financial complexity? Only time will tell. But one thing is clear, the journey of Mel Owens is far from boring. From football fields to courtrooms to reality TV roses, he's proving that reinvention isn't always smooth, but it is possible. And sometimes, paying the price of yesterday is exactly what frees you for tomorrow. If you enjoy stories about love, resilience, and unexpected twists in the lives of familiar faces, stay tuned for more updates and deep dives into the journeys that keep us all watching. Because in the end, the most compelling love stories aren't perfect, they're real. And just when everyone thought the legal drama had finally settled, a new layer of reflection began to unfold around Mel Owens. Because here's the truth, when a major court ruling forces you to write a check that large, it doesn't just affect your bank account, it affects your pride, your plans, your sense of stability. For someone who built a career in professional football, transitioned to law, and then stepped into the romantic spotlight of the Golden Bachelor, Mel's identity has always been tied to strength and control. He is the guy who reads the fine print, the guy who understands contracts. So imagine being on the other side of that courtroom equation. Friends close to the situation say the ruling was a wake-up call, not in a scandalous way, but in a deeply personal one. Divorce, especially after decades together, isn't just about dividing assets. It's about dividing a life that once felt permanent. There are shared homes, shared memories, shared sacrifices. And when courts get involved, those emotional ties get translated into numbers. For many fans, the big question became, how does this impact his romantic future? Because love at this stage of life isn't about fantasy alone. It's about financial clarity, security, planning for retirement, protecting children, protecting peace. Some insiders suggest that once the payment was finalized, Mel took a step back, not from love, but from noise. He reportedly focused on recalibrating, reviewing investments, strengthening financial foundations, making sure there would be no more surprises waiting in the shadows. And honestly, that's kind of attractive.
There's something compelling about a man who handles responsibility quietly and moves forward without theatrics. But here's where it gets interesting. Viewers who once saw him simply as the charming former athlete looking for romance are now seeing layers. A man who has experienced public success, private heartbreak, legal pressure, and still chooses to believe in love. That resilience changes the narrative. It transforms him from a reality TV personality into something more relatable. Because let's be honest, reinvention after 60 takes courage. You're not just dating, you're carrying decades of history with you. And while some critics argue he should have resolved every legal detail before entering the spotlight, others say life doesn't wait for perfect timing. Sometimes opportunities and love arrive before paperwork is neatly wrapped up. What matters most is how you handle what follows. And by reportedly complying with the ruling, Mel avoided what could have become a far uglier public battle. No prolonged defiance, no dramatic standoffs, just resolution. There's maturity in that. Interestingly, some fans have even speculated that this entire ordeal might make him more intentional in his next relationship. Financial transparency, clear expectations, maybe even prenuptial conversations that feel less awkward and more necessary. Because once you've learned an expensive lesson, you rarely forget it. And let's not ignore the emotional side. Imagine going on romantic dates, talking about forever, while knowing that a courtroom decision could shift your financial world any day. That kind of pressure can either break someone or sharpen their focus. For Mel, it appears to have done the latter. Sources say that since resolving the issue, he seemed lighter, less burdened, more open. That's the funny thing about closing chapters, even costly ones. There's relief in finality. And maybe that's the real love story here. Not just finding someone new, but becoming emotionally and financially free enough to welcome them fully. Because love built on unfinished business can wobble. Love built after accountability stands stronger. Fans continue debating whether this chapter will follow him long-term or fade into the background. Reality TV audiences can be forgiving, especially when growth is visible. And growth, that's compelling. In many ways, this legal ruling might end up being the plot twist that strengthens his legacy rather than weakens it. A reminder that even public figures must navigate ordinary struggles, and that grace under pressure speaks volumes. There's also something poetic about a former athlete facing life's second half with the same determination he once brought to the field. Different arena, different rules, same competitive spirit. Except now, instead of chasing touchdowns, he's chasing peace, and perhaps love again. The biggest takeaway from this unfolding story isn't the dollar amount, it's the lesson. Clean endings matter. Responsibility matters. Integrity matters. And sometimes paying what's owed, emotionally or financially, is the final step before stepping into something truly new. As the dust settles, one thing feels certain. This chapter has reshaped how people see Mel Owens. Not just as a man searching for romance, but as someone navigating real-life complexities with a steady hand. The cameras may fade, the headlines may quiet, but reinvention, that continues. And if his journey has taught us anything,